everybody. Thanks for joining us on the next episode of Half Street High Heat, a very sad episode of Half Street High Heat for us. As I'm sure anyone who listens to this podcast knows, it was Bryce Harper week. So let's start out with the introductions. I'm your host, Amanda White. You can follow me on Twitter at awhite7877. I'm joined as always by Nick and Ryan. You can follow them on Twitter at DCNatChack, and you can follow the podcast itself at Half Street High Heat, with the street is just ST. We're doing this podcast for the DMV Sports Network. You can follow them on Twitter at DMV_SN. And you can go to the website, dmvsportsnetwork.com, and find all the content about all DC sports as well as local college sports. And you can get the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, or we're now getting them out to YouTube every week as soon as they're published. So if you don't do podcasts, you can listen to it there. All right. So without further ado, let's talk about Bryce Harper. And then I don't want to talk about Bryce Harper again. He's dead to me after today. So let's do this because we have to, but then I don't want to talk about him ever again.
It's tough, honestly. I'm just sad, seeing everything. Obviously, it's a huge signing. It's probably the biggest free agent signing ever, but it's sad, honestly. I don't know how to feel.
Yeah, sad pretty much covers it.
Yeah, basically.
I mean, it sucks as a fan of Bryce. Don't want to see him going to the Phillies. It's not fun, and this is not going to go away. This is going to be tied to the Nats for 13 years,
and then some.
Yeah,
sports are a business. I mean, this stuff happens. It's part of the game. It's a terrible part of the game, but nothing we could do.
Yeah, and I saw somebody point out, and I hadn't really thought of it this way, but if you think back through DC sports, we've had more than our share of heartbreaks. But one heartbreak we haven't had really is losing big homegrown stars. I mean, Ovi's still here, Backstrom's still here, John Wall, Bradley Beal. I mean, you can go down the line and find the guys where most of the time the big names are staying here. So it's hard to take. And honestly, the going to Philly part is what bothers me the most. And there's been a lot of debate about, how fans should feel. And to me, I think I would feel a lot differently if he hadn't gone to an NL East team. It's the having to play against him 19 times a year is tough.
Yeah, I was on the same page as you until I saw his press conference. And then I just realized where he was coming from, that he didn't want to leave DC. But, I mean, they just weren't giving him anything close to a real offer. And
the Phillies gave him what he wanted. And it got to the point where it was March. He won the longevity, won the record, and they gave it to him. And the Nats had other stuff they had to do. They made the moves they had to make, fill the holes, everything, and just the money wasn't there. If this was a different offseason where the Nats had less glaring weaknesses, I think they could have matched the offer.
And I think they could have matched it anyway, but I'm not entirely in agreement with you that they just didn't, want to do it. I think they did. The offer they made him, I keep seeing people make the argument that it was insulting. It was all this this deferred money, but they do that with it wasn't insulting to Max Scherzer or to Patrick Corbin or to Steven Strasburg. That's the way the Nats do business. And Boris knows that. They could have come back and said, hey, we don't want this they didn't come back to them. That's what Lerner said last week, is they didn't come back to them with a counter or anything. And
none of them were the homegrown talents, so that's the thing. And they weren't 26.
That's true, but I just don't get it's an insult to Harper to offer him deferred money. That's the way they do business. He could have come back and said, I don't want deferred money. This is what I want. And he didn't do that for whatever reason. And I don't know what the reason is. But
I mean, I think that was more Boris than anything. Boris wants to avoid deferred money. And the reason Strauss took it is, Strauss was an extension. He literally went to Boris and said, I don't want to go anywhere else. I want to be with the Nats.
Right.
Work something out. So it was a little bit different. But the thing with deferred money is that, the last payment of that contract they offered him would have been, when he was 62. And yes, he would have gotten all $300 million, eventually. But at the same time, when you're offering a deferred contract, the reason it wasn't an insult to Strauss or Max or anyone is because when you were offering deferred money, it has to be more than what you would normally get. So if $330 million was like the number for Bryce, then if you're offering deferred money, it would have had to been like 360 million.
Well, right, but my point is, if they never came back
and
negotiated,
they didn't even get that.
But if they never came back and negotiated, who knows what could have happened if they had come back and said, okay, we don't want deferrals, or we'll take this much in deferrals, but we want it to be this much more money. You know what I mean? It just seems like that you said, you made the point yourself. Strauss said, I want to be here, make it happen. I don't think Bryce did that. So maybe he did want to be here, or maybe what he really wanted was to have the biggest contract ever. And that's just not something the Nats were willing to do. And
but you can't blame Bryce, because he was literally the best free agent to ever hit the market. So yeah, he wanted to test free agency. One, the Nats offered it before free agent even started. And two, I think, I know I'm not the only one who said it, so I'm not going to take like sole credit, but that offer was literally just for show. It wasn't like
it was an opening offer, and I don't think they expected them to take it.
That was a terrible opening offer. That's what, if you're thinking,
the value came to like 184 million over.
It didn't, right? But the point is, the value was 300 million. If they wanted to structure it a different way, they could have. And I'm not saying I blame Bryce. I don't think there's blame here, really. I think, the Nats have, as you pointed out, a bunch of things they needed to do this offseason. And when I see what they gave Bryce, 13 years, no opt-outs, I love Harper, and I'm sad that he's not going to be a Nat for the rest of his career. But I wouldn't have wanted them to give him that contract. I wouldn't.
I would take that contract every single day and twice on Sunday.
I think that if you even look at the Jason Worth contract, he was older, obviously, but
one of the worst contracts
these
ever.
Contracts the fans are never happy. The team is never happy at the end.
Oh, Jason Worth sucked, so that's a terrible comp.
But the point is, that's just a Nats comp. But there are lots of comps all around the league of giving huge contracts, long-term contracts. And in the last 5-6 years of the contracts, it's an albatross. And I love Harper.
It's completely different when the guy's 26, though. They're just completely different.
They're different, but I don't think they're completely different. I just disagree.
It is completely different.
Well, emotionally, I'm sad Bryce is gone. But from a business standpoint, I wouldn't want them to give him that contract. So.
See, I think that's a great deal for the Phillies, because they're paying him $25 million for 13 years. Every free agent that comes out, they're going to go, hey, come play with Bryce Harper for the next decade. Mike Trout in 2 years, play with Bryce Harper for the next 11 years. Every big pitcher, they're going to be able to pay them, because they basically deferred the last 3 years of it for $30 million.
If that was that big of a draw, why did the Nats not get every free agent coming out that they wanted? If playing with Bryce Harper was such an enormous.
But the thing is that Mike Trout was selling Bryce on Philly the entire offseason, and the Phillies
but he's from there. That's
a lot of money.
Yeah.
So
to answer your question, Amanda, like the reason he wanted no opt-outs and a no trade deadline is that he knew he wouldn't be able to sell anyone on Philly if they thought he was leaving, which is why he would never sell anyone to the Nats, because everyone knew the 2019 offseason of Bryce Harper was going to happen. So there was always a chance he was going to leave, even since the kid was like 16.
Right, but that was, there's been years where they haven't. I don't know. I am with you guys completely in the emotion of the thing. I'm sad and disappointed that he's gone.
I just want to punch something, okay?
I don't want to punch something, but I think that I bet you if we revisit this conversation 6 or 7 years from now, that people in Philly are going to be bitching and moaning about paying Bryce Harper $25 million a year
they have a couple World Series.
Yeah, maybe and they always bitch and moan.
Everybody said we were going to win a couple World Series with Bryce too, and we didn't. So
we never thought we weren't going to re-sign him.
Yeah, but I'm just saying. I think that you might be. Bryce Harper is a generational talent, but it's a team sport. I don't know that you're gonna. I don't think their pitching is that deep. You can't win a World Series just with Bryce Harper.
Well, I don't think they're done yet. Not like I think they're done this offseason, but in terms of future free agent classes, like next year's starting pitching class is stupid. They've been free agency
for this for a long time.
Well, and we'll see. It remains to be seen what will happen, and maybe they're going to go on to a dynasty, and maybe not. Maybe Bryce has. There have been a lot of fans here who feel like all three of us do, that we're all devastated that he's gone. But there are a lot of fans who feel like he's overhyped and overrated. And frankly, a lot of those people are in Philadelphia until 12 minutes ago when they got him. They've been talking for years about Harper's overrated and Harper's a douche and Harper's this and Harper's that. And, now they have him and suddenly they claim to love him.
Biggest fans.
Yeah.
But, I'm not going to tell anyone how they should feel on this. Like, if you want to be pissed at Harper, I've seen everyone change their Twitter names to Bryce is dead to me or whatever. Like, like if that's how you want to process it, fine. I mean, I'm not gonna like tell you have to root for a player who's now playing for a rival. Like that's just how it is. But at the same time, people who miss him and people who loved what he's provided over the past like 7 years are allowed to do that too.
Yeah,
so.
I don't think you have to choose either. I think it can be both.
Exactly.
I'm personally, I keep seeing people say, "Oh, we should give him a standing ovation because we should respect everything he did here." And I get that argument. I am typically of that. I'm not going to give him a standing ovation when he comes. I'm going to be at that game, and I'm not going to boo him. But to me, if you want respect for everything that you did here, you could have the respect to choose any other team in baseball except our biggest rival. You know,
you did. One of our
They're not the biggest rival.
Well, I think they are in the NL East right now. I mean, the Braves won it last year, but I don't think they're going to win it again.
The Nats and Phillies have never been good at the same time, so to me, they're not a rival. You know, like I had someone say Bryce,
they are now
face of the Nats, like front office. Like, shut up. Okay, the Nats were out of it a long time ago, and Bryce took the biggest money. What every single free agent gets. I understand being mad. I understand being upset. But people are just overreacting so much. Like, shut up.
I agree.
It's a business. It's always about the money. And
of
he
course
took the best offer.
And that's fine. Like I said, I'm not going to boo him. I'm not mad at him, and I'm not mad at the Nats either. It's a business.
That's also another one of our Twitter questions. Our followers are just on point today.
I know. So. Well, I guess we can save the rest of that conversation for then.
One thing I did want to say is, like, if the Nats were never really going to be in on Bryce, why not trade him at the deadline?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Although I think maybe it was more of a face-saving thing with fans than anything else, like just admitting that they weren't in on Bryce.
I don't know. It's just there wasn't one good thing that came out of this, and losing Bryce was going to hurt one way or another. But like at least they could have done something.
And you know what? I think I think from a perspective of keeping their fans happy, I think they probably made the right decision by not trading him, because if they had traded him and now he went and joined with the Phillies, everybody would be furious at the team. And right now, everyone's not furious at the team. So if their goal was to keep their fan base placated, then they accomplished it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not happy with them, but yeah, I'm not furious.
I'm not mad at either side. It's a business. It is what it is. But I think that if Bryce wanted to keep his legacy here in DC, keep a sense of the love and respect with the fans, then Philly was the wrong choice. And honestly, the fact that he has yet to even reach out, make any kind of a statement or say anything to the fans of DC is pretty surprising and kind of hurtful. Like even the team put out a little "thanks for the memories, Bryce" tweet, and nothing from Bryce at all to the DC fans.
He verbally did in his press conference.
Yeah,
to
he
Rizzo.
Talked about it.
Well,
no, he talked about it in DC in general.
Yeah, he talked about like his home. And, I mean, I thought he'd say something on social media, but
I think he should have taken out a full page ad in the Post or something. Like he should have done something.
People have been so mad at that.
Yeah,
I don't care. I think it would have been the classy thing. This fan base has showered him with love.
That is not true. That is not true at all. This fan base has like been so polarizing to him ever since he came up. There's always
people in every fan base that are jerks about it. But this, were you guys at the home run derby? I have never. Yeah, I was there too, and I have never felt. Even I was downtown for the Caps winning the Cup. That home run derby was the most electric, amazing moment, and that'll go to one of our questions later too about my favorite Bryce moment. That's it.
Nope, that's my answer.
Well, I'm just I'm sad he's gone, but I think neither side, the team nor Bryce, really handled it as well as it could have been handled. No. It was never going to be good for. It was never going to be fun for the fans to lose Bryce, but they could have all handled it better.
And a lot of what we talked about has to do with that SI article that came out. And I think there just was, whether it was between Boris and the Lerners or Bryce and Boris or whatever it may be, but there was some sort of hard falling out that just didn't really come to light.
I have a feeling it will. I have a feeling as the weeks go by now that this is a done deal. We're going to stuff's going to start to leak out and we're going to get some stories.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Which means if we're not done talking about it.
Oh, yeah, you're probably right. All right. Well, let's be done for the moment and move on a little bit. Let's talk about the off-season grading for the Nats here. Now that we know Harper's not going to be a Nat next year, how do you feel? Does it change the way you feel about the off-season? Before, when we had this conversation, we said, hey, they've had a great off-season. It'll be even better if they sign Bryce. Are you guys feeling different now?
No, I mean, I'm feeling the same. I never thought Bryce was coming back, and the Nats went out and they replaced his production as best as they could. They added the top line pitcher. They're going to have Robles playing in center field, who's going to be better defensively than Bryce.
Maybe they're going to have Robles playing in center field.
Easy.
And then they went out and got Dozier, who, when he's healthy, is a 30-plus home run power. And then they also replaced the catcher production. So they went out and they replaced the production all over they could. Mm-hmm. And they're still talking to Kimbrel. So, I mean, they've had a really good offseason.
Oh, please make Kimbrel happen. Please, 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 please. I want that to be – I want that to happen. That will salve my wounds from Harper quite a lot if we can get Kimbrel.
Yeah, it doesn't change my opinion of them. It's just I wish – there was some more effort, but maybe there was something that hasn't come to light yet on the whole Bryce thing and how the offseason played out. But no, all in all, it's probably Rizzo's best offseason, so I can't really blame him for any of the
I'm
moves
still giving them an
done.
A offseason. It would have been an A+++ with Bryce, but it's still an A from me.
Right.
Okay, so we just touched on, did they do enough to address the lineup? And you made a few points about that. Dozier, I think if he has the bounce back year I think he's going to have, is a big piece. Just the catcher spot's been a black hole. And I think, both Gomes and Suzuki are going to be a big upgrade over the production they were getting there. So I think they did do what they could do. There aren't a lot of big bats out there available.
Mm-hmm.
So, looks like at Please Win DC, that's Sabir, our colleague at the DMV Sports Network, asked that. How important is it to have a consistent long ball threat? I think they still do.
I mean, their lineup's not going to be the same, and I think it's probably about the third or fourth best lineup in the division. But they're going to have to score in ways they haven't been able to the last 7 years, and the Nats have been relying on the long ball. So if they completely shift their approach and try to produce runs,
they're going to need more small ball than they've been accustomed to playing.
They'll be a lot better because teams that rely on the long ball get screwed come October. They just can't win the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So hopefully this is a huge culture change, and now they realize team effort. We got to do it. Let's move the ball around, and then they should be fine if they can do that.
Yeah, because as much as people are looking or expecting Soto to not replace Bryce, but kind of fill in some of the areas where there's holes that Bryce left, I think he can. But one area I don't think he's ever going to be that 40 home run threat. Like he probably could, but I don't think that's his game, which isn't a bad thing. But it's not the same as having
there's
Bryce
a lot
in your
more
lineup.
to offense than the long ball.
Exactly, and I don't think that's Soto's game. Like, he's still obviously very valuable, but I don't think that's it. So obviously having a consistent long ball threat where no matter who you are as a pitcher, you're scared of facing, like, obviously that's a huge impact in the lineup to have, and we don't really have that right now.
Agreed, but we'll see if filling in with different pieces as opposed to really replacing the kind of piece that Bryce Harper was is going to be enough. I think if their rotation's their biggest strength, if they can, if their bullpen can be good, and right now I'm iffy on their bullpen. If they sign Kimbrel, I'll feel a whole hell of a lot better about it. But if they can have really dominant pitching, both relief pitching and starting pitching, then a little bit more of a weak lineup isn't necessarily a death knell.
Yeah, that'll be the key.
Yep.
Okay, so another question we got was MillerSeth2022 on Twitter said Kimbrel would be great, but do we believe the Nats will actually do it?
My gut says no. I would love it, but just because I'm looking for some sort of hope right now after being crushed on Thursday by Bryce signing, let's just say Kimbrel does sign. People need to realize that Doolittle does not care about being the closer, and it is not going to hurt his feelings.
Right. I think that too. Everybody keeps saying that. Oh, we can't do that to Doolittle. Who cares? These guys are professionals. Like, they're not. Yeah. Probably each of them will close sometimes, and some of them will set up sometimes, and who cares?
Yeah, and it just makes more sense. Like, even if you want to argue that Doolittle is better than Kimbrel, you can more than welcome to argue that, but it just makes more sense to have Kimbrel close so you can have Doolittle as that lefty
and
specialist.
How amazing would it be too to have where you can choose from two elite closers situationally? Like, you could say,
it's a great problem to have.
Right, exactly. And Rosenthal too, who obviously we're looking for some bounce back from him, but Rosenthal's a great pitcher too. I mean, if you had your 7, 8, 9 inning in any particular game could be Rosenthal, Kimbrel, and Doolittle, you could do a hell of a lot worse.
Yeah, baseball is not in the business of feelings.
Right.
There's
no crying in baseball.
Yeah, exactly. I swear I've heard that somewhere.
No, I made it up. It was definitely my
Oh, wow.
thing, yeah.
Look at you.
Genius.
All right. So let's do our FYI segment here about Harper again. I guess we aren't done talking about Harper. The three big ones that we've heard about publicly, at least, are the Nats contract with all the deferred money, the Giants contract that apparently was 12 years, so also really long, but $310 million as opposed to $330, and of course the California taxes takes a big chunk as well. And then the Phillies winning offer, the 13 years, $330, with no opt-outs, no trade clauses, and spreads the AAV out pretty much equally across the contract.
Yeah, so obviously we kind of already touched on the Nats one. We won't harp on that too much. I don't think it was a legitimate offer, and I don't think the Nats ever expected him to like take it or even like think it was a real offer. Like I think it was pretty obvious when they offered it to him that it wasn't.
$300 million is still an enormous offer, no matter how you split up the money.
The way the way it was structured, though, it's just it kind of was a spitting in the face of.
I just think if both sides wanted to make it work, they could have worked it out. The $300 million number is the $300 million number. Like but
they've dealt with Boris enough to know that like he can see right through that. Like they knew that Boris wasn't gonna like that as even if it was a legitimate opening offer. Like,
I have a question for you guys. This whole thing with Boris has to have left a bad taste in both sides' mouths. I mean, Boris was pissed at the Lerners for what he felt like was messing up the market for Bryce, and I'm sure they're pissed at Boris about the way this whole thing played out. Do you think that, you know, the relationship, I know Boris's relationship with Ted Lerner was very close, but it doesn't seem like Mark Lerner is nearly as much of a fan. And do you think that relationship is less warm than it was before, and that could impact their negotiations on, you know, Rendon and other Boris clients?
100%.
I had someone DM me, and he like has like one of his buddies works for the MLB like exec up in New York, and said that a lot of owners are pissed at Boris, and like a lot of the relationships are bad. So I feel like owners are kind of just done with Boris.
Over Boris's crap,
yeah. Realizing that he is bad for the game. So I think that's going to be pretty interesting. We probably will see players start leaving him because
I was just going to ask that next. What do you think? Because I don't think he did a good job with Harper here at all. I think Harper he didn't want to play in Philadelphia, and he just committed the rest of his career to a city he didn't really want to go to.
Yep. I agree with Ryan. I mean, Ryan pretty much summed it up. I think eventually, well, I don't think it'll happen before the new CBA, because I think Boris will swindle players into like staying with him until that new CBA hits, and we'll just see how it plays out from there. But I think, the inevitable is players will start leaving Boris, because he just, like, owners are at the point where they can just like see through his tactics at this point. So.
Yeah, well, I'm not a fan. I'll just throw that out there for anyone who cares. I'm not a Boris fan. Okay, so Giants, that one was the 12 years, $310 million.
Speaking of not real offers, that was not real offer. The Giants were trying so hard. I mean, they had no shot. The Giants are about to tear down their roster and start the rebuild next year, and their coach is retiring. There's no way in hell Bryce was going to sign that.
Right, and that's that would have been a terrible place for him to play on top of that.
I don't think it was like no shot, though. Like, obviously, the contract wasn't obviously good enough, but I mean, I think they still had a legitimate shot. I think Bryce would have been interested in going there, but obviously Bochy retiring.
They have no farm system, and they're done. Like, they're about just tear it down. So I didn't think that happened. I was surprised they didn't take the Dodgers offer with a high AV for 4 years, but
$45 million a year, and you could have hit free agency again when you're 30. To me, that made so much more sense for him. I was shocked, frankly, that he took $20 million less for the next 4 years, just so he could have
that much.
Yeah, it's crazy though. I mean, I don't know, that to me, it makes me wonder, like, what really, maybe he's saying that they just wanted one place and they didn't want to have to do this again, and maybe it was that important to him. But you're talking about giving up $80 million over the next 4 years to play in Philadelphia. I can't understand that.
I think it's hard to look at $330 million and be like, I'm going to take a short-term deal, but I get it.
Yeah, I get it too. And in California, you know, that Giants deal, I read somewhere that they would have had to come up to about $360 million almost to really make it the same value as the Phillies deal because of the taxes.
Or been smart with the wording, like the Padres were with Machado, so he didn't get hit that hard by the taxes.
Yeah. And it's funny how you hear nothing about Machado right now. It's just Bryce.
Yeah. Well, Machado's old news, so.
I know that was like a week ago. It's old news.
Who? Yeah. Machado who?
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, so now that we know Bryce is not going to be a national ever again, deferred payments is one of the big reasons that, we know he didn't like the offer from them. There are a lot of contracts the Nats have structured that way with these deferred payments, and they're going to start coming due in about 2025. So I wonder if the Lerners structured it this way, planning that the Masson debacle that's ongoing will be resolved by that point. So they'll have a lot more cash flow to deal with, and maybe that was the reasoning behind all these deferred deals. But they are going to have a lot of money that's going to start coming out on those. So is that going to affect the signings they make for the team at that point, or do you think they're kind of keeping those as separate money buckets?
That's a good question. So there was an article that I saw on Twitter. It was like the Nats are going to suck in 2025, and it's just they have so much money in deferred payments. I know they keep structuring like this with the Masson thing and just in the back of their head, but how much money are they really going to get from that where they can just be like, oh yeah, no problem, let's just shell out the $105 million we owe to all these guys real quick. Like I hate deferred payments so much, and I understand why they do it, but eventually it's going to catch up to them. It's just going to absolutely screw them.
Yeah, it's like putting it on the credit card. Like it's good for a time, but then eventually it catches up to you.
Yeah, just doing a minimum payment.
Yeah, and it's obviously 2025. We still have 6 years of a
I just can't make myself care about what's going to happen in 2025.
Yeah, so obviously if you can win like a World Series or two now or like before 2025, you do that. But it really makes you think, and it makes me think in particular. I'm worried about this whole Rendon thing. Like I don't think Nat should be optimistic that a deal's going to get done. And that's just my opinion.
Sound close.
Yeah, I'm starting to get very, very worried about Rendon's pending free agency.
Yeah, I'm worried about it too, although I don't know, it's still so early in the year, and he said he's willing to talk through the year, and, I don't know. After what we just saw Arenado do, and Rendon's not the kind of guy who likes attention. He's not the kind of guy who's going to enjoy a free agency, I don't think. I think if he wants to be here, that he's and he tells us, if Boris just comes to them and says, this is what it's going to take to keep him here, I think it could be something like Strasburg, where he just says, I want to stay here. Let's make it work.
Yeah, it definitely could be like that. And Rendon has been outspoken saying like Boris isn't dictating his free agency. Like he's not afraid to like push back on what Boris says.
Didn't that sound like a subtweet of Harper a little bit?
Maybe a little. But again, like you said, I don't think Rendon's that type of guy. Like he doesn't, I don't know. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But nevertheless, I don't think the Machado and Arenado deals help the Nats case at all, because I think obviously those guys.
They just raised Rendon's value for sure.
Right, exactly, and I just with these deferred payments, and I think inevitably they're going to offer Rendon something with deferred payments. I'm just not optimistic whatsoever. I mean, because I think Ryan's the one who said it, like something. Like a 6 for $120 seems like a fair offer. Yeah, he's probably going to end up getting more than that.
Yeah, I think he's going to get somewhere in the 22-23 million a year AAV range. And, he may or may not be open to the type of deferred payment structure that the Nats like. But I don't necessarily, again, 2025 is so far out that I'm just not going to concern myself about it. But, if they do get a nice settlement from the Masson lawsuit and they start making the kind of money they ought to be making on their television rights, I think a big chunk of these deferred payments can be handled by that. And, and the Lerners have a gazillion dollars. And if the way they prefer is to spread it out rather than to spend it all at once, like it doesn't really matter. As long as they're willing to keep spending on players, I don't really care if they want to do it this way. If the players are willing to do it and the team prefers it, then it just doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I think the thing is though, it's just deferred payments, they're just generally not good business. Like if it was just max, that's one thing, but if all your big money contracts come with deferred payments, it's gonna catch up to you at some point. So really, obviously 2025 still way far in the future. Like I don't even know what I'm having for dinner tonight, let alone like what's going on with the Nats in 6 years. But it's just cause for concern. Like when you think about potential free agents, obviously still this offseason, if we get a Kimbrel or moving forward like a Rendon and so on and so forth, it's not good business. And I think it really puts a number on what the Nats window is. I think their window to win is really only 3 to 4 years.
I don't agree with that, but I don't know. I just don't see it as all the same bucket of money. I don't think they're going to say, hey, our payroll is this much money today. And once we start making these deferred payments, if it's $100 million in deferred payments, we're going to drop our active payroll by $100 million. I just don't think it's that kind of a thing. I don't know that they're the same bucket of money. Do you know what I mean? I think they've got some separation between them. So I don't see it as a zero-sum game with
I get that.
Payments.
And I think, I mean, it's hard to look at any team and say we're going to be competitive for the next 6 years. Like even the Red Sox, like if you go from 6 years ago, like they had like 2 years where they won like 70 games. So it's hard to stay competitive for that long in any sport, but baseball's not excluded from that. So I just think at some point there's going to be a shift where we start reevaluating.
And all teams go through rebuild cycles, and it may be that they've structured it this way intentionally to coincide with what they expect to be a rebuild cycle. You know, if we're going to spend a bunch of money and likely we're going to be in a rebuild by this point, and then we can spend a couple of years, get below the luxury tax and whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It could be that they're thinking that far ahead, but it might be that they're just doing what works for them right now, what can get them the players they want right now, and they'll worry about it in the future. They're not the kind of people who are worried that much about the money.
or they're not thinking at all. Who knows?
Yeah, I suppose so. Seems unlikely, but I suppose it's possible. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Turner, Eaton, and Soto. They've got arbitration years coming up. Do you think all of this deferred money stuff, as those start to come up in the next 3-4 years, that we're going to be worrying about them getting raises in arbitration?
No, because by the time that Soto hits arbitration, there's going to be a new CBA. Turner has 4 years arbitration, and it's going to be slowly increasing each year. I'm not really worried about that. And Eaton just has his club options. So with the new CBA, all of them are going to be impacted differently. So I don't really think that's going to be an issue, especially with the deferred payments for guys who are just in arbitration.
Yeah. And what about Soto? When's his first arbitration year?
So the last year he didn't make enough games, so he has this year and 2 others before arbitration.
So we got a ways to go on that.
Yeah.
Wait, how many games do you need to hit arbitration? He played a majority of the year.
Yeah, but he only played. I read it the other day. Like he didn't meet the requirement for a number of days, so he just missed
service time days, I think. And of course, they probably didn't call him up until just after, as the teams always screw over the minor leaguers that way. Yeah,
of course.
Yeah. So they
you can be one of the
another
best.
Year of team control out of that.
Oh my God! Yeah, the CBA is a joke.
For sure. The other thing, as far as talking about a window for the Nats to win, the Braves. How legit do you think they are? Are you worried about them this year? I know they won the division last year. Do you see them as a big threat?
I think the Braves are going to be a big threat for the future. They have an absolute loaded farm system with a bunch of young arms, a bunch of young guys. I kind of expect them to take a step back this year with a little bit of a sophomore slump, but they have a very small payroll and a bunch of young guys. So they put themselves in the way where they have 23 coming off this year with Donaldson, and they can go after whoever they want in free agency.
Yeah, I was thinking there's a lot of big name free agents coming up next year, and I think they might be setting themselves up for a big offseason next year.
And we talked about the Phillies, and the Phillies have been preparing this for years. They literally said that they've had their eye on Bryce for 3 years. It seems the first of their plan. So I think we're slowly going to see the Braves and the Phillies make the big moves where they become the power of the NL East, and they're going to start taking over. I think it's a couple years away from that becoming a reality. So Nats really need to take advantage of that.
So we really need a World Series before then. If you guys are listening, Nats, I need you to
just win a playoff series. Honestly,
honestly, that is our World Series. Is the
or for this year?
round.
Could we just get there this year? That would be good.
Talking to you, Davey.
Yeah. If anyone listening. So I suppose just for the sake of thoroughness, we should talk about the Mets and the Marlins.
The Mets. See, here's the thing about the Mets. The Mets pitching is so freaking good that when they're healthy, they're one of the best teams.
But that was it right there. That caveat. That when they're healthy, they can't stay healthy.
I mean, you already look. They already got weird injuries. I mean, 2 guys right hurt their knees. 1 guy's got hurt because he can't cook chicken. It's just the weirdest things happen to the Mets.
Yeah, it's like they have a curse on their franchise, which I wouldn't be surprised. But the thing with the Mets that we have to like acknowledge, like I don't think they're a threat this year or probably even next year, but they're never afraid to make that big splash, whether it's a trade or a free agent signing. Like, yeah, they're the little brother of New York, but they're still a New York market team. So, I mean, they could some way, somehow like convince big name free agents to come play there. So I don't think they're ever going to be like on the level as the top 3 in the division for the next few years, but they could still like make things happen.
Yeah, if they could,
season, sorry. No. If they get full season healthy from DeGrom, Syndergaard, and Wheeler, that's 90+ wins right there.
Yep.
And that's the thing about them.
Yeah.
DeGrom isn't very happy there, and they have until opening day to give him a contract extension, or he's not talking anymore. So,
I don't think that's going to happen. I think this is probably the last year they're going to have DeGrom.
They started out saying they'll give him whatever they want, and now they came out and said that they're going to try to sign him for as cheaply as possible. So,
yeah, that always makes players happy when you say that publicly.
I love
that.
Yeah.
Especially when you're a top 2 pitcher in the league.
Right.
I mean,
yeah. It's just I don't see them. I don't know.
Yeah.
If they could have a healthy rotation for the whole year, and that's a big if. Nobody has a healthy rotation for the whole year.
No.
And they don't have the depth, I think, to make up when they have big injuries to their best pitchers. But they also, if everything fell in line for them and they were really healthy the whole year, they could make a run. But I don't think that's going to happen. Last
time they're healthy, they went to the World Series.
Yeah, that's true.
Him and Sammy Solis, 1 and 2 pitchers in the league.
That's just wrong. So since we're doing an NL East rundown, I suppose we should mention the Marlins.
Yeah, I mean
they play in Miami.
Yeah,
that is the team that plays in Miami.
They did like update their uniforms and they look pretty sweet.
They're really nice.
You know what? I will agree with that. Is a nice thing to say. Their new unis are sweet. I like.
Yeah, so they got like a Miami Vice thing going on, but like they actually might need like actual help because that organization is awful.
Dumpster fire. And I'll tell you, I wonder sometimes if they hadn't lost Jose Fernandez, what might have been like.
Yeah,
really changed their franchise.
Yeah,
I saw it was. I don't know who it was. One of the big name baseball reporters. Was it Bowden? I thought it was. I thought it was Kirchner
talking about. I thought.
Okay, yeah, all right. Maybe it was Bowden. He was talking about Jose Fernandez, not to like ignore like the drug use and stuff like that, but just his presence within the organization and basically how, like, if he was still around and alive, obviously,
and they
like
had
how
Yelich
different
and Real Muto. I mean, they had some
needed
pieces.
One more starting pitcher, and they needed a bullpen guy, and we're having completely different conversation.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. And then with all those trades, with all those pieces they sold off, they didn't really get anything. I mean, all those trades were kind of steals going the other way.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're even going to be there. There's been a lot of talk about them leaving town.
Jeez, I mean, how bad can Jeter ruin an organization?
Well, I know, but I mean, you look at that. You look at the games when they're televised. There's like 5,000 people in the stands. Like, you can't sustain a major league team in a town where you can't get anybody in the seats, you know?
Yeah, I mean, but it wasn't always like that. I mean, they've won a playoff series more recently than the Nats.
Yeah.
Hey, 2 division titles. Sorry, no division titles, but 2 World Series, baby.
I know, that's crazy. Yeah. That's so nuts. What a crazy stat.
Maybe that's what the Nats need to do. They need to ignore the division and go straight for the wild card.
That's what I'm saying. And then have
that's the key
out there. Boom, there's your playoff series win. It's off your back, guys.
Oh man, yep. Go straight for the wild card. We are wild card 2019. That's our slogan for this.
Make it happen. 85 games, baby.
I still can't even think about that last playoff game the Nats had. I was there, and it like hurts my stomach to even think about it. The one they lost to the Cubs. No, one. No, you forgot that. Okay.
No,
Nats have
Yeah.
never made the playoffs. What are you talking about?
Oh my God!
Yeah.
That when Scherzer came
No,
out,
they just got here.
I've never seen Nats Park. Like we talked about being there for the home run derby and how Nats Park was the most insane environment.
Yeah,
I have
RFK was
never,
bumping.
I have never felt it like it was when Scherzer came out and had that awful inning. Like it was the worst feeling in the whole world. I was just devastated. I still even thinking about it now.
Cobain.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about some Twitter questions. We've got a lot of Twitter questions this week. We actually worked a few of them in to our discussion since there were so many. Let's see. We got from Truck2112 on Twitter. Why do some Nats fans feel that Bryce owed it to them to stay or at least not to sign with an NL East rival?
I feel like with sports fans and like really often in DC fans, they get their feelings so involved with their players and sports that they forget it's a business, and they feel like players owe something to them, and like players care about rivalries. Most rivalries are just between the fans. The players don't really care about most of them. Obviously, there are some where they hate each other, but like
Penguins, Capitals, anyone? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Red Sox,
exactly.
Yankees.
They hate each other.
Yeah.
But like, I just feel like people just forget that, and they get their feelings so involved, or they get hurt.
Yeah, I mean, I'm completely with Ryan on this. Like, he summed it up perfectly. I was talking to one of my friends about this, and she pointed out like a pretty good point that like we're still a young fan base, and I was kind of trashing on them like a couple episodes ago, saying they don't come out for their guys, but we're still a relatively young fan base. So obviously, that means we're not always going to come out for our guys, or like we're just going to be way too emotional when we get to this, like a star leaving or for a rival team, just because we haven't really gone through that before. Like people like the Yankees, I mean, they've had players leave, and obviously bigger teams, they've had players leave, so they're not used to it, but they've gone through it before, so they kind of know what to do.
Yeah, I agree with some of that. I think it is a young fan base, but I don't think it's unique to DC. I mean, I don't know if you guys watched what just happened on Long Island for John Tavares. I don't know how much hockey you guys watch, but
like,
I would say that they're a little bit up in their feelings there in Long Island about John Tavares.
The "Where are your pajamas" chant was one of the greatest things I've
that was
ever heard.
funny. But the other thing too is, if people talk, I get upset when people knock on the Nats fan base. I think it's a good baseball town, and it's a smaller fan base than a lot of places. But when you carve a new fan base out of an area that already rooted for other teams, it takes time. I mean, this is if you look at those maps that people put out of where do people root for which teams across the country, the geographical area where people root for the Nationals is fairly small.
There's no such thing as Orioles fans, though. I mean, that was like an easy picking.
I grew up rooting for the Orioles because there was no other team around, but I was never I couldn't really love them because they weren't a DC team, and I dropped them like a hot potato when the Nats came to town.
Because they're awful.
Well, they are awful now. But the other thing, too, is I do think there is something to it. I think that if Bryce was here for a long time, he knows the feelings of the fan base about the Phillies, and I think he did the best for himself. He did what was his, what he chose was the best decision for his family, and I totally respect that. But he needs to, I'm sure he understands that he was destroying a lot of the goodwill that he had from DC when he did that, and he made that choice, and that's fine. But I don't feel like he should be, upset that the fans are upset. Of course they are. I mean, what did you think was going to happen when you went to an NL East rival?
Yeah. I still think he didn't want to do it. Like that press conference just sold it for me. Like he did not.
Yeah, it looked like a hostage video.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to do it. Like he looked like he was just like, "This is going to be the longest 13 years of my life."
Yeah, that's the part that gets me is I don't feel like he wanted to go to Philly, and I can't believe that he signed basically an unbreakable contract for the rest of his career in a city it doesn't seem like he really wanted to go to.
I mean, he definitely wanted to make it look like he wanted to be there.
Yeah,
that's for sure. But
I hear that, but I don't know. He didn't seem happy when you watched it at all.
Not at all.
And we've seen Bryce happy, and that wasn't it.
Not at all.
He turned on robot mode in interviews, and he kept slipping up, and like you could tell he wanted to be in DC, and he misses it.
I know, it's really depressing.
Interviews since he was 4.
Yeah, it's nice to know that he still plans on bringing a championship back to DC, though.
Yeah. I just feel like if he's not happy now, though, wait until he goes into one of these long slumps where DC fans have always had his back. Nobody gives him a hard time when people talk trash on Twitter, but Twitter's not real life. When you go to the ballpark,
Twitter is everything. What do you mean?
Twitter is a cesspool full of the worst people in the world.
At DC matchup.
I'm on there too. Don't worry, I'm insulting myself, but I'm just saying Twitter is a cesspool, and it's the worst place. Like they're not reading everything on Twitter. Do you know what I mean? In real life, when you went to the ballpark, he didn't get booed and treated like crap. If he has a long slump or he, screws up in a big spot or something, the Philly fans are going to be awful because they're awful.
Yeah,
not going to deny that.
Yeah, you can't really argue that.
Yeah, that is on this. There can be no debate. All right, so let's move on to the next Twitter question here from @OneLovelyLadyC, who's one of my favorite DC fans on Twitter. I love her. She says, thoughts on how we've had terrible managers during Bryce's tenure and how deferred contracts are terrible business. Well, tell us how you really feel.
It's pretty rude to Matt Williams, who's an all-time great.
Oh, God.
My God.
But the learners never value managers. Like, they just think, if you have a great roster, like, it'll win itself. Managers won't really impact it. Like, we could have had freaking Girardi, but we didn't. And we got stuck with Matt Williams and Davey, who had a terrible first year. And
even Bud Black, like, they had an agreement with Bud Black and literally just lowballed him to the most, like, egregious offer, like, he's ever seen. And then he went to the Rockies. Yeah, and he's doing great. Like,
of course he is. He's Bud Black.
Yeah, he just does. They don't value managers. So, and, like, even Rendon said it. He was like, we have a new manager every 2 years. I'm just used to it at this point.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, it's not just like it's like affecting Bryce; it's affecting all the players.
It's true, and I think though, when you not to discount the importance of a good manager because they are very important, especially in the National League. But I feel like you can't really put a lot of the things that have gone terribly wrong for the Nats, like losing in big, like Drew Storen giving up a huge lead in the
blowing every big game.
Blowing every big game. But I'm thinking of Game 5 of the Cardinals series in 2012.
Yeah,
which is still the stuff of my nightmares. But like that, like players screw up in big moments, and that's not on the managers. Of course, he should have freaking pulled him, but.
But I think, and Davey or Dusty never should have started at Worth.
Right.
Yeah.
There are managerial
like
decisions. There are a lot of bullpen management things with Dusty that used to piss me off.
But I think you look at the Red Sox, like literally they had John Farrell, who was by all accounts a terrible manager. Boom, Alex Cora comes in, who's a great manager by all accounts, and they have like one of the greatest seasons ever.
Yeah.
So I mean, managers aren't to be taken like lightly, like the learners have.
Agreed.
Like a good manager just doesn't like fall into your lap. Like you have to go get them.
Yeah, I agree. So. It is important, and they don't give it the importance that it deserves. I don't know that you can say we didn't make it further than the first round because of managers during Bryce's tenure. But I also think that it could have been different. There might have been years where we didn't make the playoffs that we might have if we had had better management decisions. So it's hard to say in retrospect, but I definitely think that the learners are not paying enough attention to the importance of managers and paying them what they're worth to get a good one. Deferred contracts, we talked about that pretty extensively already. Obviously, our friend here thinks they're terrible business. I'm not as bothered by them as sometimes. As long as if they don't make it so that they're reducing their active payroll as a result of the deferred payments, then I couldn't care less. Like, do what you want with your money.
You're going to be mad when Rendon doesn't take the contract because it's a deferred payment heavy contract.
In 2025, you're going to be furious.
All right. Well, we'll be on like episode 9004 of this show by then, so we can talk about it then. All right.
Yeah, we'll be doing the post game on Masson.
Okay, let's move on to @Nats Hot Takes. Gives us the sad one. What was your favorite Bryce Harper moment? It hurts to use the word "was" in this, but we'll say, what's your favorite Bryce Harper moment?
I That's tough. I think I'm gonna go with Bryce just completely making Hunter Strickland like his
No, that's fine.
I was at game 1 when Bryce hit the home run off of Hunter Strickland, and not including the home run derby. That's the farthest home run I've ever seen. Like that was a freaking moonshot, and Hunter Strickland was so mad that he was mad 3 years.
Yeah,
later.
he was. Yeah, he was.
Like Bryce was his dad, and that was just incredible.
Yeah, and a young father he was. Yeah, that was that was a great moment. I will definitely give you that one.
I'm taking the home run derby because I was there, upper deck.
No way, so that
first row, second deck, like right field. Bryce was just hitting home runs all around.
Oh yeah,
that energy. Granted, it was just baseball fans. It wasn't just Nats fans, but it was the energy was like.
I've never
unreal.
That moment when he hit that last one and everybody knew it when it came off the bat. It was the most electric feeling. I've been to hundreds of sporting events, and that was the absolutely most electric feeling I've ever experienced in person.
Yeah,
it was.
If any of you ever get a chance to go to the home run derby, absolutely do it because it's so worth it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So since you took the home run derby, I will do one more. When he stole home after getting beaned, when he was his rookie year, it was or when he first came up. When Cole Hamels hit him, and then he got on first on the hit by pitch, and then wound up stealing home. That one was one of those where I was like, "Holy crap!" Like this kid is special.
You know what's funny to me is that when he came up and he would go diving face first into the scoreboard in the outfield, and people are saying he was playing the game too recklessly, and now people are saying he doesn't play the game hard enough.
People are never happy.
Yeah, they're never happy. No matter what you do, it's just never going to be enough.
But again, always remember that when you see people being unhappy, it's on Twitter, and Twitter is full of the worst people in the world.
It's the small population.
Yeah.
At DC NetJack.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Follow us on Twitter, people. Okay. At Barb BZZZ says, Nats fans are known for giving former players standing ovations. Will Bryce get a standing O?
Drew Storm got a standing ovation. And that
I was at that game, and he did not get one from me, I can tell you.
Bryce is going to get a standing ovation. People are just mad right now, but by April 2nd, they're going to see the tribute video, and all the fuel's going to come back, and they're going to give a standing O. There's going to be some people booing, but he'll get a standing O.
Yeah, they're all going to send the "Hey, big head" text at 2 a.m. April 1st. So
yeah. Well, right now I'm too pissed off to consider giving him a standing ovation. So we'll revisit this after I go to that game and tell you.
I'm wearing my Harper jersey. Don't care.
Ugh. Oh, see, that's just not nope. That's a no from me. That's a no from me. He plays for the frickin' Phillies.
And
I've never heard that team before. So.
All right, we got our weekly question from Dom at Dom and Thunder. What's worse, Bryce leaving or Michael A. Taylor potentially starting opening day?
So that's a good episode of Half Street High Heat. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Well,
Michael Taylor stuff. Let's be honest.
That's not worse than Bryce leaving. Come on.
Oh, dude, it's pretty bad. Bryce leaving is one thing, but thinking of Matt replacing him and being a starter in general is literally
every time I see, and I'll tell you what, Taylor's having a great spring, man. He's tearing up the Grapefruit League. Every time I see his stat line, I look at the games and I'm like, oh man, wait till this week's episode. We can talk about Michael A. Taylor again.
It's gonna happen. I know it's gonna happen, and no.
What do you have against strikeouts? I don't know why you hate him so much. I don't know.
Yeah, come on, Nick. Strikeouts are sexy.
Bryce can hit 240, and people will say he's the worst player ever. Matt can hit 220, and people are saying he's a great guy and deserves every chance in the world.
Well, and that's actually a good broader point. Is I've had this argument with people so many times about people say Harper's overrated and Harper, didn't live up to his potential and all that. I think he could never have lived up to the hype. He could never lived up to people's expectations. They were unrealistic. And he's a generational talent, and the team is worse without him. But I will say, sort of to wrap up and put a bow on the Bryce Harper stuff, is that the team's been planning for life after Harper for years. And I think they did as good a job as it would have been possible for them to do to to make up for his absence. And I still have really high hopes for the season for the Nats. I think they've improved themselves in a lot of different ways. And the Phillies, I think, still aren't as good as the Nats, even with Harper in their lineup.
I think they definitely have a better lineup for sure.
Yeah, but I don't think they're a better team.
No, it's close.
If the Nats'
I agree.
top 3 starting pitchers are healthy, the Nats will win the division.
Yeah.
There's that if.
Yeah, there it is. There it is, because Strasburg's got a lot of injury history, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. All right, and then one more to throw in here before we break
My
off.
favorite segment of
the new segment.
New segment, worst tweet of the week. And this week's worst tweet comes from @PhilCoach on Twitter. He said,
Do better, Phil.
We were too classy for Bryce while he almost single-handedly tanked the first half of our 2018. Batting 180 after the first 3 weeks. Our World Series celebration will be 10 times better than the Caps. I'll boo loudly in a classy tone. 34 dead to me.
There's just
wow.
Not the humble brag, but Natchak gets 1,000 mentions a week, and this was the one that stood out to me the worst. Come on, man. First of all, no one player can single-handedly ruin a team season, and what ruined the season was the starting rotation dying. Like, I get being mad.
Yeah, and I think the moment for
Phil.
me when the season went totally off the rails, never to come back, was Doolittle's injury. To me, that was it. Like, when Doolittle went down, that was it. Like, there was no way. The bullpen was a mess anyway. And Herrera was never what we thought he was going to be when they picked him up. And when we lost Doolittle, that was it. It was over. So did Bryce have a bad first half? Undeniably. He had a bad first half.
He didn't say first half. He said first 3 weeks.
Yeah, no, he said after the first 3 weeks. Batting 180 after the first 3 weeks is what.
My apologies, Phil.
But anyway, I just, the whole idea, I am off the Bryce Harper train. I will appreciate all the things he did for this organization, but I'll always watch his career and pay attention to what he's doing because I won't be able to stop myself. But being dead to me, I understand the sentiment, and he sort of is in that way. But I'm not gonna boo him. And the idea that we were too classy for Bryce is odd to me.
Yeah, and then he was like, he's like, our World Series celebration will be 10 times better than the Caps.
Yeah,
what?
Also that. You know what? I'm a huge Caps fan. You better watch it, sir. Watch it, Phil.
Yeah, like, I don't... It's so bad.
I'll tell you, I was down at the watch party for the Caps when they won the Game 5. It was in Vegas, and I was out on the street with my husband and my 2 teenage sons, and I can tell you it was pretty damn awesome.
Yeah, we were, Ryan and I were actually at the bullpen outside the Nats Park.
Nice.
So, yeah, we experienced that firsthand too.
Yeah, and still not as awesome as that was, not as electric a situation as the Home Run Derby.
Not even close.
But that's not even close to what the Nats World Series will be, because that'll be 10 times
10 times better, baby. We're going to be cheering in a classy tone.
Or booing in a classy tone. I don't know. Something. All right. Well, and regardless, Phil, thank you for listening to the podcast and for interacting with us on Twitter. We don't mean to give you too much of a hard time. We appreciate it. All right, guys. So that, I think, will do it for us for today. Hopefully we will have less Harper talk next week because it makes me sad. Also, and I forgot to do this in the middle, so apologies, Tom. I want to make sure all of you guys know about the DMV Sports Network's Library podcast. There are shows for all the local teams, Redskins, Caps, Wizards, Nats, in addition to some mixed bag shows that are called It's About Time DC and Dom and Thunder, both of which talk about the Nats. So if you're looking for more Nats content, you can certainly find them there. You can get them wherever podcasts are available. And that will do it for us. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe and leave comments, ratings, reviews. We really appreciate all of that. You can find me again on Twitter. I'm Amanda at awhite7877. You can find Nick and Ryan at DC Natchak, and you can find the show at Half Street High Heat. If you want to check in with DMV Sports Network broadly, you can find them at dmvsportsnetwork.com and follow them on Twitter and Instagram at DMV_SN. Thanks again so much for listening, and we will talk to you guys next week.
Later.